During a live concert, Jungkook's shocking public rejection of Taehyung leaves fans in tears. What happened seconds later will break your heart. "Don't touch me, Taehyung." The microphone wasn't off. The words rang out raw and loud across the stadium, bouncing off the LED-lit dome and sinking like knives into the chests of everyone present. Tens of thousands of fans, dressed in purple and waving their army bombs in rhythmic glow, fell into a stunned silence. Only the echo of Jungkook's voice remained, bitter and sharp, hovering in the air long after his body had turned away. Taehyung's hand, still reaching out, froze mid-air, fingers slightly trembling. His eyes, wide and unsure, locked onto the back of Jungkook's head as he stormed to the opposite side of the stage. The music was still playing faintly in the background. VCR transition music meant to cue their next performance, but it felt distant, like it belonged in another universe. The crowd, confused, slowly began to murmur. A camera operator, unsure of what to do, instinctively zoomed in on Taehyung's face. His expression was unreadable, beautiful, and broken, the kind of silence that screamed louder than any words. A girl in the front row started sobbing, then another. Then the floodgates broke. Only moments before, everything had been perfect. BTS had just finished an emotional performance of Spring Day, with Jungkook holding the final note longer than usual. The members were walking to the front of the stage to interact with the fans, smiles, waves, the usual. Taehyung had reached for Jungkook's arm, a small touch, barely noticeable, something they'd done countless times before. But this time, Jungkook flinched, pulled away, and then said it. Everyone heard it. Backstage, chaos erupted. Managers scrambled toward the tech booth, demanding a cut to the VCR footage. Namjoon looked frozen at center stage, a forced smile on his lips as he tried to maintain the illusion of normalcy. Jimin instinctively stepped toward Taehyung, but stopped when he saw the look on his face. It wasn't just shock, it was betrayal. Taehyung lowered his hand slowly and turned away from the audience, walking toward the side of the stage like a man walking through fog. The lights dimmed prematurely, and the screen behind them suddenly cut to a pre-recorded video of their childhood memories supposed to be nostalgic, warm. But now, it felt almost cruel. The audience didn't cheer. They wept. In the darkness of the corridor backstage, Taehyung leaned against the concrete wall, his chest rising and falling rapidly. He didn't speak. His in-ears were still in, and someone had to come remove them gently. A staff member whispered something, but Taehyung didn't respond. His eyes were unfocused, staring at nothing. Across the hall, Jungkook stood alone in front of a mirror. His hands gripped the counter so tightly his knuckles had turned white. His breathing was shallow. His eyes, once filled with fire, now looked terrified. A knock. Jimin walked in, closing the door behind him. He didn't speak at first, just looked at Jungkook, studied him. "Do you realize what you just did out there?" he finally said, voice low and trembling. "You humiliated him in front of everyone." Jungkook didn't turn around. He knew why. "No," Jimin snapped. "No, I don't think he does." The silence was thick. Jungkook finally spoke, his voice cracked. "He read the messages." Jimin blinked. "What messages?" The ones I sent to her, before everything. Before it all blew up. He saw them." "I know he did." Jimin stepped back, confused and angry. "You think that justifies what you did? That's not how you handle things with someone you've known for 10 years? Someone who—" He looked at me like I was a stranger. Jungkook turned around then. His eyes were wet, not crying, but close. He looked at me like I was the one who ruined us, like I was the villain in his story. Outside, the VCR ended. The lights came back on, but something was missing. The atmosphere had shattered. Fans were still crying. Some had begun chanting Taehyung's name softly, almost as a prayer. Others just sat in stunned silence, unable to process what they had witnessed. Inside the dressing room, Taehyung was silent. He had pulled out his phone, scrolled through a few photos. One of them was a candid shot of him and Jungkook laughing during rehearsal. He stared at it for a long time, then deleted it. No one saw. No one needed to. The rest of the concert carried on, but the soul had left it. When the members returned to stage, Taehyung and Jungkook stood at opposite ends. They didn't look at each other. They didn't harmonize, not once. And the world noticed. After the show, Twitter exploded. What happened to Taehyung trended at #1 in less than 5 minutes. Clips of the moment circulated everywhere. Jungkook's voice, Taehyung's face, the silence, the tears. Analysts, fans, reactors, all trying to piece together what went wrong. But no one knew the full truth. Not yet. Because this wasn't the beginning of a fight. It was the result of 1,000 unspoken things, years of unresolved tension, misunderstandings, jealousy, buried guilt, moments they never dealt with, things they assumed time would heal. But time, it seemed, had run out, and the world had watched it all unfold. Say it to my face. Taehyung's voice cut through the silence of the dressing room like a blade. It wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. The way it trembled, cracked, yet somehow still stood tall, that alone made it deafening. Jungkook turned, startled by the voice he hadn't heard since walking off stage. The room had emptied out. Staff had given them space. The other members were scattered, some in shock, others afraid to intervene. But Taehyung wasn't waiting for privacy. "I'm here now," he said again, stepping further into the room. "So say it again. To my face this time." Jungkook opened his mouth, closed it. His body was rigid, as if every muscle had locked. His throat clenched as the seconds stretched. "Why?" Taehyung continued. "Why did you push me away out there? Why did you humiliate me in front of all of them? What did I do, Jungkook? What did I do to deserve that?" Jungkook's jaw tensed. "You know exactly what you did." "No, I don't." Taehyung's hands were balled into fists at his sides. "So tell me, right now, you read the messages." Taehyung blinked, confusion flashing across his face. "What messages?" Jungkook's eyes flared. "Don't play dumb." "I'm not," Taehyung snapped. "What messages are you talking about?" Jungkook strode to his duffel bag, unzipped it violently, and pulled out a phone. Not his usual one, a backup. He tapped rapidly, pulled something up, then turned the screen to face Taehyung. Taehyung stared. The screen showed a WhatsApp chat, a conversation, Jungkook's messages, flirty, confessional, sent to someone Taehyung recognized all too well. Yerin. Wait. Taehyung's eyes darted across the messages. These were months ago." "Exactly," Jungkook said, voice shaking. "And you didn't say a damn thing. You just started acting different, cold, distant, looking at me like I betrayed you, like I was disgusting. You didn't even ask me what it meant or when it happened." Taehyung looked up, eyes burning. "Because I didn't need to ask. You were texting her while I was—" He stopped himself. Jaw clenched. "While I was still dealing with everything she did to me." "I know that," Jungkook hissed. "I know what she did. And that's why I stopped. That's why I never told you. It was stupid. It was reckless. It lasted a week and I ended it because I realized it was a mistake." "And you still didn't tell me?" Taehyung's voice cracked. "I had to find out from a screenshot she sent me on purpose, I might add. Just to ruin us." Jungkook's expression twisted. "Then why didn't you confront me? Why did you act like everything was fine for months until today?" Taehyung exhaled, deeply. His hands trembled slightly. "Because I was trying to understand you," he said. "I was trying to understand how the person I trusted the most could hide something that felt like betrayal. I thought maybe if I gave you space, if I waited long enough, you'd come to me. You'd tell me. You'd apologize." I waited. Jungkook's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Taehyung stepped forward, but instead you punished me, silently. You distanced yourself. You made me feel like I was the problem. You stood next to me on stage, smiled in front of cameras, but every time our eyes met, it was like you were daring me to bring it up. "That's not true," Taehyung laughed, but it was bitter. "Then explain the last 3 weeks. Explain the way you stopped joking with me, the way you avoided my messages, the way you flinched every time I touched you." Jungkook turned away, pacing. His breath hitched. "I was scared," he said finally. "Okay, I was scared. Because I knew I fucked up, and I thought if I stayed away, maybe it would all blow over." "That's not how this works," Taehyung said softly. "You don't get to be scared and make me pay for it." There was silence for a long moment, the kind of silence that screamed with everything unsaid. Then Taehyung asked the question that had been killing him quietly since the moment he saw that screenshot. "Did you ever love her?" Jungkook turned, violently. No, not even for a second? I thought I did, Jungkook admitted. But it wasn't her. It was. I don't know. It was the illusion, the comfort, the way she made me feel like I didn't have to think too hard. But it wasn't love. Not like... He stopped. Taehyung didn't blink. Not like, what? Jungkook looked away. Taehyung's voice dropped, softer now, almost broken. Not like what, Jungkook? Not like you, Jungkook whispered. It hit like a gut punch. The confession hung in the air, naked and trembling. And for a second, everything stilled. The pain, the betrayal, the misunderstanding suspended in the weight of those 3 words. Taehyung staggered back slightly, his breath caught. But you pushed me away, he said, in front of everyone. I panicked. Jungkook said, voice hoarse. I saw your hand, and I thought, God, I thought you were trying to make me act like everything was fine. I thought you were doing it for the cameras. I didn't know it was real. It was real, Taehyung said, eyes shining. Even when I hated you, it was still real. The door opened. Namjoon stepped in, slowly. His face was pale. He glanced at them both, then shut the door behind him. I don't mean to interrupt, he said gently, but you need to know what's happening online. Taehyung and Jungkook turned to him, silent. Namjoon sighed. The clip, the push, the don't touch me, it's everywhere. The media's spinning it as a breakup. Others think it was staged. But the fans, they're devastated. Some are turning on you, Jungkook. Others are calling for a hiatus. People are demanding explanations. You've got hashtags trending in multiple languages. Taehyung exhaled, rubbing his eyes. Of course they are. There's more, Namjoon said. The girl, Yaren. She posted something on Threads, a screenshot of a conversation with you, Jungkook, with a caption that says he wanted more than friendship. Jungkook paled. She's dragging this out intentionally, Namjoon said. She wants war. She's going to win if we don't say anything, Taehyung muttered. Namjoon looked between the two. So, what are you going to do? Taehyung turned to Jungkook, and something about his gaze had changed. It wasn't softness. It wasn't anger either. It was clarity. You should speak first, Taehyung said. You're the one who hurt me. You owe them the truth. Jungkook nodded slowly. And you? Taehyung hesitated. Then, I'll decide after I hear what you say. Jungkook nodded again, then picked up his main phone, opened Instagram, tapped into Live. Taehyung's eyes widened. Now? Yes, Jungkook said. Now. He stood still for a moment, breathing hard as the live stream loaded. And then, to over 6 million live viewers, Jungkook said, I owe you all an explanation, especially to those who were in the stadium tonight and saw what happened between me and Taehyung. The comments exploded instantly, but Jungkook didn't look down. I acted out of fear and guilt, he continued. I betrayed someone I care about more than anyone in the world by hiding something I should have confessed long ago. I hurt him, and I hurt you all too. He paused, swallowing hard. What you saw tonight wasn't a performance. It was a mistake. My mistake. But I'm here now. Not as Jungkook of BTS, but just me. And I'm sorry. At that moment, Taehyung walked into the frame. The comments imploded. He didn't speak. He just stood beside Jungkook. After a few seconds, he said quietly, I forgive you. Jungkook turned. Their eyes met. And for the first time in months, something unspoken passed between them. Healing. It wouldn't fix everything overnight, but it was a beginning. Outside the screen, millions of fans cried. Inside the room, 2 people began to rebuild what they'd nearly lost. Not for the cameras, not for the stage, but for themselves. And this time it was real. The lights had long gone dark in the stadium, but the echoes of that night still clung to the walls like smoke. The fans had gone home, some in tears, others in disbelief, but the internet was still ablaze, breathing fire into every frame of the viral moment between Jungkook and Taehyung. The apology had gone live to millions, and though the words had been raw, honest, and unscripted, they barely scratched the surface of the story neither of them had ever dared to tell. Back inside the dressing room, silence returned, the kind of silence that wasn't empty, but swollen with unsaid things. Taehyung stood by the window, staring out at the Seoul skyline, the city shimmering beneath a blanket of insomnia and LED ads. Jungkook was seated on the leather couch, arms resting on his knees, his body hunched forward, the weight of his confession sinking deeper now that the world had heard it. No one else was there. No staff, no members, just them. The world outside could speculate, dissect, romanticize, and judge, but this was the part that no one would ever livestream. This was the part no one would believe even if they saw it. Taehyung didn't turn when he spoke, so now they all know. Jungkook's voice was low, hollow. They don't know everything. And you want to tell me now? Taehyung finally turned. When it's already exploded? When we're both burned and exposed? Jungkook raised his eyes, pained. You deserve the truth. All of it. Not just the version I gave them. Taehyung folded his arms. Then talk. I'm still here. Jungkook swallowed. The tension in his chest so tight he felt like breathing hurt. It wasn't just Yeren. Taehyung's body didn't move. But something in his eyes did a flicker, sharp as a knife. Jungkook continued, his voice trembling. She wasn't the first. She wasn't even the worst. She was just the one who got caught. Who else? Taehyung asked, ice in his tone. There was someone else, Jungkook said. A year ago. Not long. Just a few weeks. It was during the Japan promotions. You remember when I kept leaving early after rehearsals? Taehyung nodded once, slowly. You said you were dealing with migraines. I was. But I was also meeting someone from the crew. Her name was Minju. Taehyung blinked, disbelieving. The lighting tech? Jungkook nodded. She was easy to talk to. She didn't know everything about us. She didn't carry all the pressure. It felt safe, but it was a lie. She wanted things I couldn't give. And I walked away before it became physical. Taehyung's fists clenched slowly. But it wasn't just about her, was it? No, Jungkook admitted. It was about you. Taehyung's brows furrowed. I loved you, Jungkook said. I still do. But you made it so goddamn hard to hold on to that. You never said it. Not once. Not clearly. Not in a way I could believe. And I got tired of waiting. Taehyung's voice shook with restrained fury. You think I didn't feel the same? You think I didn't lie awake every night wondering if it was real between us? We were never allowed to be anything, Jungkook. Not truly. Not openly. You think I was scared of you? No. I was scared of what loving you would do to us. I wanted you to fight for it. I fought in silence, Taehyung hissed. I protected you when people asked about us. I turned down every distraction because I didn't want to lie to myself. And you went looking for people to numb the waiting. I was breaking. So was I. Taehyung's voice cracked. Jungkook stood. Suddenly, emotion bubbling to the surface. Then why didn't you say anything? He yelled. Why didn't you stop me before I fell apart? Because I thought you already made your choice, Taehyung shot back. Because by the time I realized how badly I needed to hold you, you weren't mine anymore. Their words collided like thunder, overlapping with years of pain, frustration, longing, and guilt. The room was too small to contain it all. I never stopped being yours, Jungkook said, quieter now. Even when I tried to forget you, I couldn't. Every lyric, every rehearsal, every hotel room, it always came back to you. Taehyung's lips trembled, his voice cracking with vulnerability. Then why did you let the world see you turn on me like that? Jungkook took a step closer. Because I hated how powerless I felt. I hated that one look from you could destroy me. And I hated that I still loved you even when I thought you hated me. Taehyung looked down. His shoulders sank. I never hated you, he said. I hated what you did, but I never stopped loving you. Silence. Then Jungkook reached into his back pocket and pulled something out. A folded paper, yellowed slightly at the edges. Taehyung recognized it instantly. You kept it? Jungkook nodded. Since Osaka, the night you slipped it under my door. Taehyung unfolded it slowly, his fingers tracing the faded handwriting. A simple note. 7 words. I love you too, even in silence. I didn't know if you meant it, Jungkook said. But I couldn't throw it away. Taehyung felt something crack open inside him. Something fragile and sacred and buried for far too long. I meant it, he whispered. Every word. Jungkook closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them, he looked years older, weary, hollow. But love's not enough now, is it? He asked. Taehyung looked up, meeting his gaze. No, he said. Not anymore. The door burst open. Jimin stepped in, panic on his face. "You need to see this," he said breathlessly. "Now." They followed him into the hallway, where Yoongi and Namjoon were standing by a laptop, eyes glued to the screen. Hobie and Jin were already on speaker, calling from overseas. "What is it?" Taehyung asked. Yoongi turned the screen toward them. It showed Yerin on a podcast. "Live. She's naming names," Namjoon said. "She's telling them everything." On screen, Yerin leaned into the mic, eyes cool and unbothered. "He told me he loved me," she was saying. "He said I made him feel like he could finally breathe again. And that's why I feel sorry for Taehyung. Because if Jungkook had really loved him, he wouldn't have come crawling to me." Taehyung's face went pale. Jungkook's breath left his lungs. "She's lying," Jungkook muttered. Yoongi raised a hand. "It gets worse." They skipped forward. Yerin was now holding up a tablet, flipping through screenshots. "You think that's bad?" she said. "Wait until you see what he texted me after their Paris show." Jungkook reached for the keyboard and paused the video. His hands were shaking violently now. Taehyung stared at him. "Did you?" "No," Jungkook said. "I swear, she's faking it." "But if the media believes her, they will," Jimin said, grim. "Because right now, the public sees her as the wounded ex, and Jungkook as the idol who lied to everyone." Namjoon sighed. "We have to release a statement. And fast." "No," Taehyung said suddenly. Everyone turned. Taehyung stepped forward, his voice steady. "We do it live." Again, Jungkook stared at him. "You'd stand next to me again? After everything?" Taehyung's eyes burned with defiance. "If I don't, she wins. She ruins you. She ruins us. And this time, I won't be silent." And so they did. 30 minutes later, they went live again. This time, together. Taehyung took the lead. "I've been quiet long enough," he said to the camera. "But I won't let lies rewrite our story." And then he told them. Not everything, but enough. About the misunderstandings, the regret, the manipulation, the truth. Jungkook spoke next. His voice didn't tremble this time. "I hurt the person I love the most because I was too much of a coward to face what I did. But I will not let someone profit from my pain or weaponize my mistakes." The comments exploded. The army split in half. Some cried, some doubted. But one thing became clear. This wasn't a scandal anymore. It was a reckoning. And it wasn't over yet. Not even close. The studio was dark except for the thin, humming blue lines of standby monitors, and the low, persistent vibration of bass echoing faintly from speakers down the hall. Taehyung sat on the cold floor near the corner, legs pulled up to his chest, hoodie drawn halfway over his head like it could shield him from the outside world. Jungkook was pacing, phone pressed to his ear, his jaw rigid with tension, his footsteps tight and erratic, like every step was a question he couldn't answer. "No, Young, I'm telling you, it wasn't us. That footage wasn't even supposed to exist anymore," Jungkook said, voice shaking with restrained fury. "No, I don't know how she got it. But it's not just old rehearsal clips. It's backstage, personal stuff." He paused. His hand gripped the phone tighter. The silence on the other end didn't comfort him. "I know what this looks like. I know what they're saying online. But someone had to dig for this. Someone inside." Across from him, Taehyung hadn't moved. He was staring at nothing, or maybe everything. His eyes glassy, but unblinking. The leaked video was still replaying in his head blurry footage from 6 months ago, just before their Tokyo performance. The two of them in the dressing room, alone, unguarded, and intimate. The clip had no audio, but body language needed no translation. Jungkook's hand on Taehyung's cheek. Taehyung pulling him closer, his fingers tangled in the hem of Jungkook's shirt. The half laugh. The breathless expression. The almost kiss before the door opened, and they jolted apart. The internet had dissected every frame, looping it, zooming it, dubbing an imagined dialogue, shipping hashtags surged. Others called it manipulation. A betrayal to fans. A marketing ploy. A fake relationship. A real one. A scandal. A crime. But to Taehyung, the worst part wasn't the public spectacle. It was how private that moment had been. How fragile. And now, it belonged to everyone but them. "I don't know who had access," Jungkook continued on the phone. But the security tags were wiped. It's like it was stolen clean. They knew what they were doing. He hung up, then tossed the phone to the couch with more force than necessary. It hit the cushions and bounced to the floor. Neither of them reacted. "I can't believe this is happening," he muttered. Taehyung spoke softly, without looking at him. "You should have told me about the cameras in that room." "I didn't know they were still recording," Jungkook said. "It was a rehearsal room. We were supposed to be off the clock." "You still should have known." Jungkook exhaled harshly and sat on the armrest of the couch, rubbing his temples. "You think I wanted this? That I wanted them to see us like that? You think I wanted the world to crawl into the one moment I thought was ours?" Taehyung didn't respond immediately. "Then, what I think is that everything we've ever tried to keep sacred keeps getting shattered." There was a beat of silence, heavy and suffocating. Jungkook's voice broke. "Do you regret it?" Taehyung finally turned his head. Their eyes met in the dim light. "No," he said, steady. "But I hate that I don't get to decide who knows about it." There was movement outside. A door creaked. Voices murmured. Then Jimin appeared in the doorway. His expression somewhere between panic and heartbreak. "It's worse," he said, walking in. "The full clip's out. Not just the rehearsal. The dressing room after. The fight." Taehyung stood slowly. "The one where I broke the mirror?" Jimin nodded. "Yeah, that one." Jungkook's face turned ashen. "How the hell?" "It's cut to make it look like you pushed him," Jimin added. "Edited. Looping only the worst angles. People are already calling you violent, controlling." "That's a lie," Jungkook said. "He was the one who—" "I know," Jimin said. "But that's not what the internet sees." Taehyung stepped forward. "And who's behind it?" "That's the part you need to sit down for," Jimin said, hesitant. "Because we traced the leak." They both froze. Jimin continued. "It came from someone inside our old Japan tour staff. Someone who got cut early. And someone who used to be close with Yerin." Taehyung's expression sharpened. "Minju?" Jimin nodded. Jungkook's eyes closed as his entire body tensed. "She said she deleted everything. She said she understood." "She didn't," Jimin said quietly. "And she's mad." Taehyung looked at Jungkook, his face unreadable now. "So it was never just about a mistake. It was a chain reaction." Jungkook didn't defend himself. "Yes." Silence again. Jimin cleared his throat. "Hybe's already preparing legal action. They're issuing takedowns, but the footage is everywhere. Reddit, Twitter, TikTok. People are remixing it, turning it into fake trailers, AU edits, fanfics, even diss tracks." Jungkook let out a dry, humorless laugh. "So now, we're a genre." Taehyung sat back down. "We should disappear." Jimin's head snapped up. "What?" "Just for a while," Taehyung said. "Let the storm pass. Let them burn themselves out." Jungkook looked at him. "You want to go silent?" "I want to be human again," Taehyung replied. "Even if just for a week. But if we vanish, they'll invent 100 more stories." "They already are," Jimin sighed. "Hybe's not going to approve this." "Then don't ask them," Taehyung said. "This isn't about them." Jungkook stood and grabbed his phone. "Where?" "Somewhere no one will follow." A few hours later, they were gone. No posts, no flight logs, just a private car and silence between them for the first 2 hours. The drive was long, the road dark. They didn't talk until the sun started to rise over the mountain line. Taehyung finally spoke. "You ever wonder what we'd be if we met before all this?" Jungkook didn't look away from the window. "Sometimes, but I don't think it would have changed anything. I still would have looked at you the same." Taehyung turned his head. "How?" Jungkook's eyes softened. "Like I was always going to break." They stayed at a remote house, nestled in a valley. No cameras, no staff, no mirrors. Just wind and trees and time. For 2 days, they didn't talk about it. They cooked in silence, ate by the fire, walked near the stream, but it was never gone. It lingered in the silence, in the way their eyes kept finding each other. In the apology, neither had the words to say anymore. On the third night, it broke. Taehyung stood at the porch, cigarette in hand, though he didn't smoke it, just stared at the filter like it might offer an answer. "Tell me what you were thinking," he said. Jungkook, who had just walked out, paused behind him. "When? When you kissed me in Tokyo. when you said it couldn't happen again. Jungkook exhaled, stepping beside him. I was terrified. Of me? Of us. Taehyung turned to him. You think I wasn't? Jungkook's voice was quiet. I thought it would destroy everything. It did. There was a beat. Then Jungkook reached out and took the unlit cigarette from his fingers, tossed it off the porch, and faced him fully. I want to stop running. Taehyung looked at him, and this time, there was no mask. Then say it. Jungkook stepped closer. The wind picked up, brushing hair from Taehyung's face. He reached out, fingers brushing his cheek. I love you, Jungkook said. I loved you before I knew what it meant. I loved you through every mistake, every silence, every time I hated myself for not being brave enough. Taehyung didn't answer. He didn't need to. He stepped forward. And this time, when they kissed, no one was watching. Not the world. Not the shadows. Just the truth between them. Raw and real, and finally free. Back in Seoul, chaos still reigned. But inside that quiet house, two broken pieces had finally started to fit again. Tomorrow, they would return. Tomorrow, they would face it all. But tonight, they simply held each other and let the rest of the world burn. There was a tension in the building so dense it felt like the walls were sweating. The entire top floor of Hybe's headquarters had been cleared. Security was stationed at every hallway intersection. Phones confiscated at the door. PR managers pacing like lawyers preparing for a trial. Outside, a crowd of over 200 reporters pressed against barricades while live streamers shouted half-truths into phones. Hashtags were boiling over. Protect Taehyung was trending globally. Jungkook Exposed was right behind it. And in between was a sea of speculation, misinformation, anger, and grief. Inside a private conference room, Jungkook sat motionless in a chair against the wall, arms crossed, eyes downcast. His hair was unstyled, his hoodie creased. He hadn't said a word in the last 20 minutes. Taehyung sat across from him, elbows on the table, hands folded in front of his face like he was praying or containing something explosive. A translator, a lawyer, and a Hybe executive were arguing over phrasing on a printed statement, but neither of them were listening. The noise around them had blurred. Only the silence between them remained sharp. Are you going to say something? Taehyung finally asked, voice steady, eyes never leaving Jungkook. Jungkook didn't look up. Would it matter? It would matter to me. There was a pause. Then Jungkook finally raised his head. His eyes were tired beyond tired, wrecked in a way that didn't come from lack of sleep, but the weight of too many eyes and not enough forgiveness. I don't know if I'm strong enough to do this. Taehyung's gaze didn't waver. You don't get to fall apart now. You already did that on stage. I thought that was the worst of it, Jungkook said. I thought the stadium was rock bottom. But now they've leaked everything. People are calling me violent, abusive, fake. I can't even go outside without someone yelling at me from across the street. You think I don't know? Taehyung replied. They've started threatening my family, calling my mother, sending hate to my siblings. Jungkook stood suddenly, pacing the room, his fists clenched. Then what are we even doing here? This won't fix it. They'll twist whatever we say. They want blood. Taehyung's voice dropped. Then give them truth instead. Jungkook stopped pacing. The truth isn't simple. No, Taehyung said. It's painful. That's why it matters. Hybe's head of PR entered the room, flanked by two assistants. Her expression was taut and aggressive, like she'd already lost a war and was trying to negotiate the terms of surrender. We're going live in 20, she said sharply. We need to finalize who speaks and when. Jungkook opened his mouth, but Taehyung stood first. I'll speak first. Everyone looked at him. No, the PR head said quickly. Jungkook's the one under fire. He needs to make the opening statement. He's the one they're accusing. I said I'll speak first, Taehyung repeated, louder this time, his voice ringing through the room like a gavel. If you want me there, that's the condition. Silence. The PR head looked at Jungkook. You agree? Jungkook nodded once. When the executive left, Jimin slipped into the room, glancing between the two of them. He said nothing at first, just looked at Jungkook, then Taehyung. You ready? He asked. Taehyung exhaled. I have to be. Jimin stepped closer, then pressed his forehead lightly against Taehyung's. Don't let them destroy you. Taehyung gave a weak smile. Too late for that. No, Jimin whispered. It's not. 10 minutes later, the lights dimmed in the press auditorium. Hundreds of flashing bulbs clicked as cameras were raised. The massive black curtain peeled back. The podium came into view. But the first figure who walked out wasn't Jungkook. It was Taehyung. A quiet gasp rolled across the room. The cameras twitched, lenses zooming in. The live stream comment section lit up in chaos. And yet, Taehyung didn't flinch. He walked to the podium like he'd rehearsed it 100 times, though he hadn't rehearsed it once. Not a single word was scripted. Not a single emotion manufactured. He stood still, hands flat against the sides of the lectern. The lights were blinding, but he looked straight into them. "Good afternoon," he began, his voice amplified through every speaker and live stream worldwide. "I was not supposed to speak today. I was supposed to stand behind someone else and nod while another apology was read on our behalf. But I couldn't do that. Not anymore." The room stilled. It continued. "Over the last few weeks, our private lives have become your entertainment. You've watched our mistakes play out like scenes from a drama. You've speculated, commented, memed, and judged us. And that's your right. You are the audience. But we," he paused, "we are not your puppets." Murmurs, tension, shock. "I will not stand here and tell you Jungkook is innocent," Taehyung said. "Because he's not. He's made mistakes. He's lied. He's let fear control him. But so have I. The only difference is that his mistakes were recorded, and mine were invisible." A sharp intake of breath spread across the room. "I was there, in that dressing room. I broke the mirror. I yelled. I said things no one should ever say to someone they love. But you didn't see that, did you? Because the footage was edited. Because it was leaked to make a villain." He looked into the cameras. "So let me give you the truth." For the next 11 minutes, Taehyung told the world everything. Not the romanticized version. Not the safe story. He talked about the pressure, the years of buried feelings, the emotional whiplash, the betrayal, the silence, the codependency, the pain of never being allowed to define what they were. He spoke about Jungkook's fear, his own pride, and how both had slowly dismantled something fragile and beautiful between them. He told them about the kiss, about the note, about the silence that followed it. He didn't spare himself, and when he was done, he said something no one expected. "I forgive him." The room gasped again. "And I still love him," he added softly. "Even now." The flashes went insane. Questions erupted. Reporters screaming over each other. But Taehyung stepped back. And then Jungkook walked out. The room roared louder, like it had been waiting to explode. But he said nothing. He didn't go to the podium. He walked straight to Taehyung, stood beside him, and took his hand. Gasps again. And then Jungkook spoke. "I don't know if you'll forgive me," he said, looking directly into the camera. "Not the fans, not the public, not the company. You." His head turned toward Taehyung. "I've spent months hiding behind silence. But you," his voice cracked, "you walked into the fire for me." He looked back to the crowd. "And I will spend whatever time I have left in this industry making sure no one ever uses your name to carry my guilt again." Then, without another word, he left. Taehyung followed. The press was stunned into silence. Backstage, chaos broke out. Executives yelling, lawyers pulling hair. But none of that mattered anymore, because the truth was finally spoken, and the world couldn't unhear it. In the days that followed, the footage was reevaluated. Context was restored. More voices came forward, staff who verified that Minju had doctored the videos, former tour managers who confirmed the emotional toll. Taehyung's speech was praised as the most courageous moment of the group's career. Jungkook was no longer just a headline. He was human again. But inside their apartment, the two of them didn't speak for hours. They just sat on the couch, hands still clasped, watching the city breathe below. Finally, Jungkook broke the silence. "You didn't have to do that." "I know," Taehyung replied. "But I wanted to." Jungkook turned toward him. "Why?" Taehyung leaned his head back, eyes closed. "Because someone had to remind them we're not just beautiful pictures in a frame." Jungkook reached over, pulling him closer, their foreheads touching again like an echo from that night in Japan. "And what are we now?" he asked. Taehyung smiled faintly. "Unbroken." And for once, it felt like enough. It was 2 days after the press conference. Hybe's headquarters was quiet, too quiet, like the building was holding its breath. Outside, the crowds had thinned, the chaos had moved online, but inside, the tension only deepened. Meetings were being held behind locked doors. Lawyers were working overtime. Contracts were being rewritten. But the biggest conversation, perhaps the only one that mattered, was happening behind a closed, unmarked door on the 14th floor. Jungkook sat on the edge of a long conference table, eyes fixed on the wood grain. His legs bounced restlessly, hands fidgeting with the hem of his sleeve. Across from him, Taehyung stood near the window, arms crossed, his reflection watching him in the glass. Jimin sat between them, unusually silent, unusually pale. There were no staff in the room, no managers, no cameras. This was private by Jimin's demand. Jungkook finally looked up. "Why did you call us here?" Jimin hesitated. Taehyung spoke next, not moving. "Jimin, what's going on?" Jimin looked at both of them. His voice was quieter than usual, but firm. "There's something you need to hear. Something I've been keeping for a while." Jungkook's brows pulled together. "Keeping?" Jimin pulled a flash drive from his pocket and placed it gently on the table. His fingers lingered on it, as if deciding whether he should go through with it. "I recorded a conversation," he said finally. 2 months ago." Taehyung turned. "What kind of conversation?" "With Minju." Jungkook stood up fast. "What?" Jimin held up a hand. "Just listen to me." "You were talking to her?" Jungkook's voice cracked. "Behind our backs?" Jimin didn't flinch. "She approached me. After the Tokyo rehearsal, she said she wanted to clear the air about what happened between her and you, Jungkook. I didn't trust her, so I recorded it." "Why didn't you tell me?" Jungkook's voice rose. "Because I didn't know if it would help," Jimin replied. "Because I didn't know who to trust anymore, not even myself." Taehyung stepped forward now, watching both of them. "And now?" Jimin looked at him, then back at Jungkook. "Now I think you both deserve to know the truth." He plugged the flash drive into a laptop, turned the screen toward them, and hit play. The audio crackled for a moment, then settled. A woman's voice came through Minju's. Smooth, casual, but with an undertone of calculation. "I told him what he wanted to hear," she was saying. "He needed someone to worship him, so I gave him that." Jungkook's breath hitched. Jimin's voice on the tape was cautious. "So, you didn't mean anything you said to him?" Minju laughed. "Of course not. It was a game. He thought I cared, but I just wanted access. I wanted what he could give me. Visibility, connections, power. And I got it. Until he started talking about Taehyung again. A pause. I should have known then that he wasn't over him. That he'd never be." Jungkook's hands curled into fists. "But you kept seeing him?" Jimin's voice asked. "Because he was stupid enough to let me," Minju replied coldly. "You think I didn't see the way he looked at Taehyung? Like he'd fall apart if Taehyung ever left him. I hated that. I hated being second. I hated being the excuse." The tape went silent for a beat. Then Minju added, almost proudly, "So I decided if I couldn't have him, I'd ruin him. And I'd make Taehyung question everything." Click. The audio stopped. Silence crashed into the room like thunder. Jungkook had stopped breathing. Taehyung was still unmoving, but his jaw was tight, eyes fixed on the floor. Jimin closed the laptop softly. "I didn't know how far she'd go. I didn't think she'd actually leak anything. But when the clips started surfacing, when they were edited the way they were, I knew. I should have said something sooner." "You think?" Jungkook's voice was hoarse. Taehyung looked up, voice quiet but cutting. "Why now?" Jimin answered with no hesitation. "Because when I saw you take his hand at the press conference, I knew it wasn't just damage control. It was real. And you deserve to have the full picture before you let the public rewrite your story again." Jungkook sat down, slowly, like his legs had given out. He buried his face in his hands. "She used me." "She used both of you," Jimin said. "And she nearly destroyed everything." Taehyung walked over to the laptop, hit play again. He listened to the entire recording a second time, eyes closed, face unreadable. When it ended, he opened his eyes, turned toward Jungkook. "You believed her." "I was desperate," Jungkook whispered. "I wanted something easy. Something that didn't make me feel like I was drowning every time I looked at you. And when she hurt you, you didn't come to me." Jungkook looked up. "I didn't think I deserved to." There was another long silence. Then Taehyung walked over to him. "You're right." Jungkook flinched. "But I'm not perfect either," Taehyung added. "I could have reached out. I could have forgiven sooner. I could have said it out loud, what I felt. instead of writing it on paper and hoping you'd understand. Jimin stood back, watching them with something like hope and sadness tangled together. "So what now?" he asked. Taehyung looked at Jungkook. "You still want to do this?" he asked. "Still want to fight through it together?" Jungkook nodded slowly. "If you'll let me." Taehyung held out his hand. Jungkook took it. Later that night, the three of them met with legal counsel. They submitted the audio file as evidence in the ongoing investigation against Minju. Hybe prepared a statement, but Taehyung rejected it. "No more press releases," he said. "We'll speak for ourselves." And they did. The next day, they went live again. Taehyung, Jungkook, and Jimin. Jimin spoke first. He explained the recording, the betrayal, his guilt. Then Jungkook spoke. He didn't cry. He didn't break. He just told the truth, raw and whole. And then Taehyung ended it. "No more edits. No more narratives. If you want to know who we are, listen to what we say, not what they show you." When the stream ended, there was silence. Then the internet exploded, but differently this time. Support. Outrage against Minju. Hashtags turned into shields instead of swords. That night, Taehyung and Jungkook sat on the rooftop of their apartment, watching the lights of Seoul glitter far below. "You really think it's over?" Jungkook asked. Taehyung leaned back, arms behind his head. "No," he said, "but I think we're finally starting the right chapter." Jungkook turned to him, voice soft. "And us?" Taehyung looked at him, and for the first time in what felt like years, he smiled without sadness. "We never ended." And this time, Jungkook believed him. Taehyung had felt this kind of fear before, but never like this. It started with a folded envelope, slipped under their apartment door at 3:14 a.m. Jungkook had been half asleep on the couch, a movie playing quietly in the background, his head tilted against Taehyung's shoulder. Taehyung had been scrolling through unread DMs, his mind a mixture of fatigue and clarity. He heard the paper hit the floor but didn't move at first, assuming it was just mail pushed in late by staff. But then he noticed something. There had been no footsteps, and the hallway light had flickered. He stood, walked slowly toward the door, heart suddenly beating faster than it should. The envelope was plain. No name, no stamp, just a single word written in red ink. Traitor. He didn't open it right away. He turned it over in his hands, eyes narrowing. Something felt off. The paper was heavier than it should have been. The air tasted metallic. Then Jungkook stood behind him, yawning. "What's that?" Taehyung didn't answer. He opened it. Inside was a printed photo, grainy, but unmistakable. It was of Taehyung and Jungkook at the secluded house they'd hidden away in weeks before. The angle was long distance, like taken through a scope. In the photo, Jungkook's head was on Taehyung's shoulder. His hand was resting on Taehyung's thigh. Beneath it, one line typed in all caps. "I'll end both of you before you end BTS." The air turned colder than the early morning chill. Jungkook's eyes widened. "What the fuck?" Taehyung grabbed his phone. "We need to call Namjoon, now." Within 30 minutes, the core BTS members had assembled in a private secure room at Hybe. The police had been notified. Security was ramped up. The room was buzzing with adrenaline. But Namjoon's voice was the loudest. "This isn't just a threat," he said, holding the photo with gloved hands. "It's a surveillance image. Whoever took this was watching you for hours, maybe days. This isn't some delusional fan. This is targeted." Jimin was pacing in the corner, arms folded tight over his chest. "This is escalated. We're not dealing with just PR anymore. We're dealing with people who think they're owed something." Yoongi hadn't spoken at all until that moment. Then he said, calmly but with steel in his tone, "Someone helped them get that location. Only a few of us knew where you two went." Taehyung froze. Jungkook looked around the room. "You think someone inside leaked it?" Namjoon sighed. "We have to consider it." "No," Hobie said suddenly, his voice firm. "We need to prove it." The room splintered into a dozen suggestions. But Taehyung wasn't listening. His mind had already started turning, cold and mechanical. He remembered every person they'd seen in the days before they left the city. Every person who had smiled too wide. Every phone screen that lingered too long. Then he remembered the conversation he'd had just before they left with one of their own. Jin. It was small, an offhand comment. Jin had asked when they'd be back from the mountains, though they had never specified where they were going. Taehyung had assumed he was guessing, but now doubt slithered in. He excused himself. The hallway was long and dark. The building felt deserted, though he knew it wasn't. He called Jin. Once. Twice. No answer. He finally texted, "Where are you?" The typing dots blinked on, then disappeared. The next morning, chaos exploded again, this time at the airport. Taehyung and Jungkook were scheduled for a quick flight to Japan for an emergency label summit, accompanied by HYBE's head of legal and 2 armed guards. Fans had been notified only an hour before, but somehow, by the time they reached Incheon, thousands had gathered. The energy was wrong from the start. It wasn't the usual mix of excited screams and tears. There was a tension, cruel, electric, unnatural. As soon as Taehyung stepped out of the car, someone screamed, "Liars!" Another voice shouted, "You ruined everything!" Security pushed forward, forming a barricade, but the surge of the crowd was too much. Something metal flew through the air. A water bottle hit Jungkook's shoulder. Another object grazed Taehyung's cheek, and he stumbled. Jungkook grabbed his wrist. "Get back in the car." "No," Taehyung said through gritted teeth. "We can't keep running." But the crowd was growing louder. Signs with "Taehyung is a lie" were flashing in the air. Others were worse, more personal, accusatory, violent. Suddenly, a scream erupted. A woman broke through the barricade, lunging toward Taehyung, something silver flashing in her hand. A knife. Time slowed. Jungkook moved instinctively, stepping in front of him. A blur of motion. Security tackled her, pinning her to the ground. The knife clattered to the floor. Taehyung stood frozen, his hand clutching the front of Jungkook's jacket, his breath ragged. "Are you hurt?" Jungkook demanded, eyes wide. Taehyung shook his head. "Are you?" "No," he said, voice trembling. "But she almost did." The woman screamed as she was dragged away. "He's the reason everything's falling apart! He's the cancer! He's the one who changed him!" They made it inside the terminal, shaken, silent. Cameras caught every second. The footage hit the internet within 15 minutes. By nightfall, the headline read, "Attack at Incheon." Who really wanted Taehyung gone? Back in the safe house, Namjoon finally confronted Jin. The elder member stood stiffly in the corner of a locked room, arms crossed,